I would like to know a bit how the session going forward. That's why I just asked this question. Thank you for the response.
Yeah. Yep. So the question was, do I need a laptop? And the thing I would say is that, to do some of the work, you would need a laptop as of today. If you just want to ask questions and walk along with me, that's fine too. And on your own, like the whole idea of this mastermind is not to be like, hey, here's how you program with C# from the ground up. This is more like, hey, did you do the work for this week? And did you make sure that you were on track to get your certification by Thanksgiving? And then what questions did you have as you're running through stuff? So I'm going to turn my camera on. Let me share my other screen here. And hopefully that looks like what it's supposed to look like. So hopefully you can see the screen now is just the actual page. Cool.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so ultimately, what I decided to do is that I want to get my foundational C# with Microsoft and FreeCodeCamp certification. So I just decided, why not hold a mastermind through my learning room and just kind of have it out here in the universe for anybody who also would like to get this, and then kind of gave it a timeline here of get it by Thanksgiving. So I'm working along with you. So full disclosure, I haven't done weeks 2 and 3 at this point, so I have no idea what's coming. And by the end of this, at the end of Thanksgiving, or right around that Thanksgiving, end of November time, hopefully we'll all have earned a foundational C# certification. So it's really cool. I'm really excited to do this, and it's fun to see how they've got this set up. So if you join the course is free. Everything's free because I didn't create this material. I'm not trying to make any money off this. I just would love to be able to say, hey, 15 of us or 100 of us got a certification, and we all kind of work together to do that. So I kind of just split it up into a couple of modules per week, not really realizing how much work was in each one of these modules. Ideally, I think this would be more better paced to go over maybe 6 weeks rather than 3, but it is what it is at this point. So you go into the site and everything's free. The quizzes and all that jazz, if you want to take them for extra practice, are great. I'll try to make quizzes for these as we go as well. And then ultimately it links back to the foundational C# cert that you get with having the FreeCodeCamp and Microsoft expanded version of it. So you can see that clearly I've only done these 7 and these 8. So this was week 1's assignment, was to start by writing your first code using C# and creating and running simple C# console applications. And ultimately what you see in each one of these, again, this is free. So this is freecodecamp.com. And if you actually care and like it, they have quite a few certs out there. So you can go out to do a bunch of stuff, responsive web design, data visualization. There's a couple on here like information security, college algebra, if you're interested with that. This is the one we're doing, is the new foundational C#, coding interview prep. I'm sure that's going to be important to some people as well. And I actually might do that one too, because I think there could be some really fun stuff in there, like different algorithms and data structures and take home projects and stuff. So I'll probably do that at some point in the next year, but just because I like that kind of challenge. But ultimately, you can see there's quite a few things out here you can do for free, which is really cool. So this is the one we're on. It's the foundational C# with Microsoft. And the reason it's with Microsoft is because it's very heavily, tightly coupled with Microsoft Learn. So the very first module, write your first C# code. Basically, you go to this, write your first C# code, and you go out and you learn, hey, there's 27 minutes on this one to do some stuff.
Yeah,
so
I have already started some of these steps.
Cool.
And right now I am at the I forgot that.
Okay. You somewhere in the first one, somewhere in the second one, or did you already get all of those done?
The second one also completed. I have just started working on the design part of the Razer stuff. For the pizza design, pizza or ordering pizza delivery screen for designing from the model classes and all.
Okay. All right. So you're down here a little bit, or sorry, are you talking about you're in one of these modules and you've got the first one done and the second one also done?
Yes.
Awesome. And then you're in this one already, or maybe even farther.
Right now I am at the Razer page design.
Okay. Yeah, I don't.
Somewhere there
Okay.
there is a learning path of Razer and model class creation and all.
Okay. That sounds like an ASP.NET or a Blazor type of thing as well.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. I'm not sure that we're gonna. I don't. Like I said, I don't know what's coming. So maybe maybe there's something here. But I was anticipating this was more just console apps for what we're doing here. But
Okay.
yeah. So Razor Pages. Is there an ASP.NET one on FreeCodeCamp, or did you just do it through? Because I know that Microsoft has a couple of, like, if you go to Learn and you look for ASP.NET or maybe even Blazor, because Razor Pages could be either one of those. So ASP.NET, you might have like a, let's see, that wouldn't be it. We want to go to training. So build that .NET applications with C#, right? So if you're out here, this is much longer. And maybe, thank you for bringing this up, Venu, because this might be another resource. So if you're really struggling, maybe you're writing these codes and you're like, it's making some big jumps, because a lot of these do make some pretty big jumps. If you're brand new to programming, it might be a little tricky. But this guy,
the thing is, I am not brand new to
okay,
programming, so regarding the consoles and all, I have pretty well knowledge about that. So that's why I just gone through these quizzes so fast and moving to that Razer thing.
okay, yeah. So okay, yeah.
I'm new at a Razer thing, so I am digging into that.
Okay, so just to be like 100% clear on that, that's awesome. I'm glad you're doing that. To get the cert, you don't need to do all that, but it's awesome that you're doing it. You just got to complete these specific modules. And that's great though, because like you said, if this stuff is pretty basic to you, the extra stuff is like, oh, sweet.
Yeah,
icing on the cake.
I will complete. Sure.
Cool. So yeah, and so they have, all kinds of training modules out there. That's ASP.NET. I'm sure there's one on Blazor as well if you're interested in. Blazor is, of course, the new WebAssembly stuff. This is a little longer, but it has Introduction to Web Development with Blazor, Build a Web App. So I'm sure there's some Razor Pages stuff in here. There are some Razor components right there. Yep. So this one, if you decide you like C# programming and .NET programming and all that jazz, and you really want to build kind of a website that acts like it has JavaScript, but you don't necessarily know JavaScript, I guess is the easiest way for me to say it, is web development with Blazor is going to give you that JavaScript feel, like a single page application type of feel, but you don't have to write any JavaScript. It's all done with C#. So it's a very popular option. Hopefully it will take off in the industry as well. People start using it there, but there's Blazor. So build web apps with Blazor is also a learn path that could be interesting to go through. So some extra stuff there. Cool.
Yeah.
So with these modules, these first modules are pretty straightforward. Ultimately, we have writing your first code using C#. What I really like about them is that it has a built-in editor. So like if you've never done anything at all, and I understand, Vinny, that you're a little bit past this, but you get this nice editor in here and you can literally console.writeline.
Yep, I have tried that too.
Cool. And run it. And you can kind of see how that works right there in the portal. It's nice because you don't have to have any kind of editor on your machine. You don't have to have any specific setup. You can literally do this on a Chromebook and you'd be able to go out there. And quite frankly, you wouldn't be limited to what they ask you to do. If you knew more about code, you might be able to say, something like that. And then you could do some calculation like y is equal to whatever number. And you could do console.writeLine. The result is something like, using some string interpolation, which we're supposed to learn at some point this week. So hopefully anybody who's watching this be like, oh, that's string interpolation. We learned that. And so it was covered in one of the modules of the first 2 sessions. So the result of adding x plus y is, quote, and then x plus y. Now this is where it gets fun, right? Because now that's probably needs to be in parens just to make sure it does that inside there. And there we go. So 32 plus 25 is 57. So you can see you're not necessarily limited to the little bit of things that they're asking you to do, like writing the hello world. But you could practice a couple things here as well. But if you're getting to the point where you're ready to, do some more stuff, obviously the second part gets you on Visual Studio Code, which is an interesting tool as well. Another thing I really liked about these is that it kind of shows you, so especially if you're a new programmer, it kind of introduces you to errors, right? It's like, what happens if I do this? Well, I get an error. The name console does not exist in the current context. Now that might be very confusing if you're new. But
it's case sensitive.
Correct. Yeah. So we got case sensitivity here, and we have to make sure that we have the ability to do that. So cool. So you walk through these modules. Every time you get a module done, this is another good one. You get a character. You can't have multiple characters inside a single quote. So you get this other weird error, too many characters in the character literal. So you can see every time they do stuff here, they're basically kind of walking you through. But what I really like is that idea of, hey, this is what it looks like when it's broken, because that gives you a chance to see, again, for a beginning programmer, it'll be really interesting to get these errors under a controlled thing. So that brings up like one of my tools whenever I'm learning something is get it working and then break it, see what that looks like, and then fix it. So kind of how to do that. And that's exactly what they're doing here. So Vinu, on this certification, the first part was pretty easy. If you get to the second one, I'm not sure if you kind of went on a different path, but the second one had some pretty interesting challenge problems. Did you get to any of those at all?
Yep. I have gone through the second part also.
Okay. So what did you think of so the second part was this, the second part had you doing the write your first code, and the last part was this calculate final GPA module. Did you get a chance to do this one then too?
I don't reach that level actually.
Okay. So this one, I wanted to spend some time going over this one today, because this is probably, it was a little bit confusing to me, like what they were asking at first. And I thought this was a really good opportunity to just kind of show some troubleshooting. So again, I'm targeting people here who maybe aren't necessarily seasoned programmers. So if you are, this may seem a little basic and just kind of like, why would you do that? I found this problem to be a little challenging because of the limitations of not using more advanced techniques, like using classes and different things that would have made it much more easy to manage. And then just understanding the question. So one of the things as a developer is you're always going to want to have to interpret the business requirements, right? And understand what they're asking. And what I found myself trying to do was trying to write code. And then I realized, you know what, writing this code from scratch is kind of not the right approach, because what I want to do is I want to evaluate what they're asking me and build a plan and then write the code so I can make more sense of it. Because there's a lot of stuff going on here to create this calculated project. Now, again, if you walked through all the modules, you had done a few things from the start to the finish to kind of set you up for this. So earlier on in the first module, they had gone over, and we don't have time to do all of this today, obviously, but early on in the first module, they had done that write your first code, where in here there was some number operations, and you did this calculate and print student grades at that point. And ultimately, you ended up doing stuff in the module here, but I'm just going to grab this and paste it. So you can see like you created this
Yep.
the student grade report with Sophia, Nicholas, Raya, Zhang, whoever, whatever names you want to use. And it kind of showed you how to do things and understand what a decimal calculation in a division does when you don't have floating point, basically integers. So they talked about different types: integers, strings, decimals, floats, bools, and char, basically, throughout the first couple modules. So if you were kind of looking for a summary of types that you need to know, those are easily it. And then ultimately kind of understanding why it's important to use this casting of a decimal here, because otherwise you get this truncated integer value versus instead of 94.6, you would probably see 94, right? And so then you would end up with a bad result. So like if we did that, maybe we run it again, you can see how that goes to 94 versus 94.6 because we are no longer getting the full precision of the decimal. So it's really cool to see all that come together. And again, we don't have time to go through all that today, but just walking through all that, that gets you to the point where you get to this final module where you're building out this for the final module for part 2 anyway. You're doing this challenge. And I will say this also, if you are still working through this and you don't want to see how I do this, you want to try it first, I would pause the video if you're watching this back so you're not like getting the answer before you see it, and I would actually try it, or just maybe this first step of seeing me do this will help you for the next time if you did get stuck. And so again, talking to those of us out there who maybe aren't as experienced in development and just need a little help there. So ultimately, they ask us to do a couple things here, and is this? I think I'm in the wrong place because I don't think I should have the output anymore. So I think somehow I got off track. So I apologize. Give me 1 second. So I thought this one had to be done in C# or in Visual Studio Code. So we're doing this one down here at the bottom. Maybe I was actually here and that's why I was like screwed up. But so I want to do this last one. I wanted to spend a good 30-40 minutes on this today, just kind of walking through it to kind of give some strategies of how I would approach this. And the only reason I'm doing this right now, unless Vinu, unless you have some other questions you would rather see first, anything you would want answered as far as any of the material?
No, as far as good.
Okay, cool. All right. So, and again, if anybody does have questions throughout the week, you can email me, you can post it in my learning room, you can post it on LinkedIn, whatever it might be. You're welcome to join us there and join us and get your questions answered too. So,
okay. So where should I get your email ID? Or is there any console for emailing there?
I'm sorry, what was the question? I got I had my video popped up and
where will I get your email ID? Or is there any console for posting the comments and doubts?
yeah. So if you're in this course and ultimately you've joined in, there should be
the write something, right?
Yeah, so you can actually post a comment here like, hey, I'm lost on module 4, right?
Okay.
Help,
okay.
Right? So I'm going to post that there just so you can kind of see it.
Yep.
And then I can respond to that. Otherwise, up here at the top is a community tab. And so the community tab is supposed to be kind of like a Facebook group. So you're going to automatically be in this successful and aspiring developers and friends. You can see that like it's not a very active community because it hasn't been going on for very long or whatever, but under the discussions, you might see eventually you might see that other stuff pop up there, or you can just ask the question right here. You can just write, I'm trying to get C# certification. What should I do, right? And so here you can send an email to people if you want some answers that way. You can actually upload an image or a video link or a file, post it out there. It has kind of that limited Facebook type of interactions that can happen. So kind of like a Facebook group. So that's a great way. Or here, right directly under the question, This will stick to the question then. So like if you go here, this one obviously doesn't have it, but this one would. So you'd see the, or wherever, yeah, so you'd see the discussion has been posted there. And I must have forgot to turn it on for that one, because otherwise I think I would see it there too. And hopefully this is popped up. Yeah, there we go. Cool. So yeah, this is a way you can also get to this video in case you didn't know that. All right, so let's talk about this challenge project then. So
Okay.
they want us to do for each, if else, else if, else structures. So again, I want to start this with the caveat that there is, or there are, well, any programming project, there's going to be multiple ways to do things. So one way is not necessarily the right way. And specifically, I want to say that we're working under some limitations at this point of what is a perceptual lack of knowledge, meaning that this is supposed to be designed to help people from the start to finish get through this certification without any additional knowledge as to what you've been presented so far. And the reason I'm saying that is because you're going to see some code in here that likely as an advanced developer you would not write, or you specifically wouldn't do it that way. And you would also move specific things to other methods, which I think is coming later in the challenge. Again, I haven't done the rest of the challenge yet, so we'll find out next week, same bat channel, same bat time, if there's going to be some sort of a better approach to this, which I'm assuming we will get, but I could be wrong. So if you're watching this, you're like, why is he writing that code that way? It's simply because we're trying to operate with the understanding that that's all we know how to do right now. And we're really focusing on the logic to solve it with a few tools that we have. Like I said, this also made it more difficult for me to solve because I wouldn't have done it this way, and which is really fun. It also shows that there's more than one way to do things. So the first thing you do here is you go to this introduction and you actually, obviously read through what they're asking. So we're a teacher's assistant. We're trying to calculate some grades. We're trying to do this, get the final score, all that stuff. Now, again, I want you to know that if you want to get the certification, you have to do all this yourself through the Microsoft Learn environment. And so just watching me do this is not a substitute. And ultimately, I'm not going to perform the whole thing in any way. But I want you to know that that's what's going on here. So you'll want to read all that stuff. You'll want to make sure you're understanding what the question's asking you to do. But ultimately, they have using for each, if, and if else if statements and arrays at this point. So the basic data structure of an array is also something that we covered. Again, if anybody has questions or if there's something about programming that is unclear up to this point, yeah.
One more question is that we need to move forward. They read the article and move forward with the quiz or assignments, right? So other than that, do we need to post or upload or share any code in Git or something? So
yeah, that's a great question. You don't have to share anything unless you want to. So
okay.
If you'd like to share code in the community and you'd like to say, hey, this is how I did it, that's great.
Okay.
And we can even do a pseudo code review on it and say, well, look at this. And, that's a really interesting approach. What was your thinking around that? And help us to get a little better at programming that way too, which would be fun. But ultimately, yeah. So you don't have to do any, so far, you don't have to do anything to validate you actually completed the code successfully, other than it's kind of a self validation at this point. But the main thing you're going to want to do is move through these modules and make sure that you're getting these experience points and that you're getting the trophies at the end, because this thing actually at the end of this evaluates that you've got the trophy. You link this to your learning profile through your profile up here, and then once you link into the profile, it can then go out and scan your Microsoft account and say, hey, you've actually passed this, which is really, really cool. I love that they're doing that. Okay.
Yeah.
So the first thing they do is ask us to get lab files, which they've already done. So we got this challenge project. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to extract that off screen real quick. And what I'm going to do is just open up the program from the starter project in a notepad, which is not ideal. But that's essentially the starter code right there for this project. So if you've walked through all the modules, they kind of teach you how to, am I not? Yeah, okay, so there's my Visual Studio Code right there. So they teach you how to create a console app. So the first thing I'm going to do is just say .NET new console, and -O is the name of the thing. So we're going to do this challenge program 2 or something like that, right? And then what that does is that creates the .NET project underneath my folder. You can see there's my program.cs file. There's the actual Visual Studio project file. You can see this is in .NET 7. So a couple of things there. And then obviously we have the object and bin folders that live up there where the executables happen. But I'm going to take that notepad text that was in that program.cs. So ultimately I downloaded the project. I then extracted it. I went into the challenge project. I went into the starter. I went into the program, opened that in Notepad. And that's what we're looking at here. So I'm just going to take all that and I'm going to paste it over top here. So now I have the program.cs file that was given to us for this project. And if I just do a .NET, they obviously say do the .NET build first. If you do the .NET run, it will build and run. Couldn't find a project. Well, that's because when I created it, it put it in a subfolder called challenge program 2. So I'm going to change directory into that. Yep. And .NET run there. Oops, .NET run. So that should build it. You see the bin folder where the bin is where the executables all end up living. And so then it did create it. And so you see that it prints out student, grade letter, and letter grade. So I haven't written any code. If you've gone through all the modules up to this point, this code is very familiar to you. And again, a couple things about the code are the way they're doing if-else-ifs, ultimately with no left and right squigglies around it is fine, a single line. As a seasoned developer, you might much more prefer to have a scenario like that where it's wrapped so you know exactly what the code block statement is. And it's up to you if you want to modify the code. It's gonna run either way. That obviously doesn't have any effect on the output. But in case anybody's wondering, well, why would I ever use this if I decide I want to add more code here?
Yeah, for cleaning the code.
Yep. So now I can add extra code and I can make sure it's already in the block. Whereas if I put that code here, it might look like it's supposed to be underneath the else if block. And actually it's not that might not even compile. Let's see what happens. Yeah, see that broke. Well, why did that break? Because I have this weird line of code in the middle of some conditional blocks, and this is supposed to be a conditional block connected to this one, but because I didn't use these squigglies, it didn't know what to do with that var ASDF. So that would fix my error, right? So,
yes, right.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So, like I said, there's a couple of things about this that as a seasoned developer, I might do a little differently. And, you might want to take some time to clean that up and do some other things as you get better as well. And again, we might even get the chance. But the idea is what we need to do is we need to take the information they have here, which is 4 different students, and we need to transfer and add additional functionality so that they not only have their original grade, but they have a grade for their exams that's average. We have then some extra credit that they might get, and we need the sum and stuff of that. So if you take some time to read through it, it's actually pretty confusing what it's asking for. So let me pull that back up here real quick. And you can see that it basically, it gives you the assignment of use arrays to store student names, use this for each statement, use the if statement, outer loop and inner loop, use an algorithm with the outer loop to calculate the average exam score, use an if else if to the average the score and assign a letter grade, and integrate the extra credit scores. So we need to detect extra credit assignments based on the number of elements in the student's scores array and apply a 10% weighting factor to extra credit assignments before adding extra credit scores to the sum of the scores. So it becomes very confusing at that point. So our grade here is 95.88 our exam score is 92.2, and we earned somehow 3.68 points of extra credit on top of the 92 average for the extra credit or whatever. And that basically gave us that 95.88 from the 92.2. And then you calculate the grade based on the new score versus the old score. So whereas 92.2 would have been probably an A minus, they get 95.88 and gets to an A. So with that, they don't give us a lot of information. They just say go make it so. And so they say update your formatted output to make it look like this, basically. And then check your work against that. And when that's done, you're essentially done at that point. And then make sure that you end up with a result that shows that all of that. Sophia gets this, 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 and this. And so there's a lot of stuff here going on, and it's kind of confusing. How did we get to that point? What do we do to get calculations? How do we make this happen? And so for me, I was trying to write the code. Like the very first thing it says is to add variables, right? So prepare, I think it says add some variables to the code, copy the file, get everything going. So now we're ready to begin the challenge. So that's kind of where we're at. So then the first thing is use existing arrays, use a nested structure for the for each and if, declare and initialize any other integer variables that are required for calculating sums. Well, at that point, it's like not exactly sure what you're supposed to do. So what I did was I just created a couple variables to store, the exam score, the extra credit score, the total points here, and then ultimately that overall score. So I could at least print out the format so I could get to this point.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we look at our code overall, we want to take this thing, and I think honestly, let's do this. Let me bring that page over here so we can do side by side with the code. Okay, so we need to get what we have here to print out this. So we need an exam score, we need an overall grade, we need extra credit. And we have basically student, exam, overall, grade, and extra credit. It looks like we kind of have 5 different columns we need to print out. We have 3, which is currently just grade and letter grade. So the first thing you could easily do is obviously modify the final output to make that work. So you could say, well, we have current student, and just to make this easier, let's do some word wrap there. So again, they're using string interpolation with tabbed characters here to kind of spread things out. We have the current student, so that's their name. So we need an exam score here. So let's just do exam score and then do another /t. And then do I have a variable for exam score? I don't know. See, Visual Studio Code doesn't do a super awesome job of telling me right away that I'm missing something. So let's do this. Let's add an int exam score equals 0. And that way, obviously we're going to actually reset that every time. So let's bring it down into this loop. So there's our current student. Okay, so they have the sum assignment scores and the current student grade and the graded assignment count there. Let's also do, actually we could probably see that's the sum assignment scores, current student grade, current student letter grade, and the exam score, and then we need that extra credit stuff too. So /t extra credit, and then we'll do like an extra credit score. Thank you, Copilot, for giving me some help there. So I need an extra credit score as well. And where did I put this? So I'll just do this for now. And I ended up blowing all this away actually, anyway, once I figured out what was actually being asked. And then we had int total extra credit as well that we need, because this basically has 2 different numbers. So we had extra credit, and we have the extra credit score, and ultimately we have the total extra credit points. So then we had like this left paren, and then total extra credit or something like that in Visual Studio Code. That. Let's try to run it and see if I'm even close on the output. Yeah, so I screwed something up. What did I do? The name exam score does not exist. I thought I made that. I guess I did not. So we'll run it again. So now we get the student, we get the grade. So it looks like this is supposed to be exam score and then grade, or overall, and then grade, and then extra credit. And we don't actually say the word extra credit. We just say 0 points. So you can see that I've got some work to do here. But this is why chunking this out a little bit into making it look a little bit like it's supposed to before we even try to do any calculations can help us to get started. So now it looks like the only thing that's wrong off the top is my header. So student, and then it should be exam score. So that's going to be way up here. So student, and then exam score. And then we'll just do 1/t until we figure this out. And then we have overall /t, and then we have grade, and then this is going to be extra credit. Makes sense what I'm doing here?
Yes.
Cool. All right. So it looks like we need an extra t here, and that will be in the output before the exam right here. And then I'm just going to kind of keep doing this until it looks like it lines up, right? So then overall grade and extra credit. Okay, so that looks like it lines up pretty good. And now we're mapping to kind of what they're asking for. Sophia, exam score, overall grade, and extra credit. Cool. So I chunked out, got that working. I threw in a bunch of variables, but I don't understand what they really wanted in these variables at all, logically. Like, I just did what it said to do so I could make this print out nice and pretty. Okay, awesome. But the next part, the next part was the harder part in my mind, for especially if you're not, very well versed with programming, to figure out what are you supposed to do to make it actually now get to these numbers. So again, I hacked on this program for a little bit last night just to see like if I could do it without any planning, and it was very not evident up front, based on the fact that I didn't write a lot of the code to begin with. And I didn't realize, exactly what they were asking until I actually just took some time to evaluate and plan. So let me do this. I'm going to bring up a new sheet here. So what I realized is that ultimately we have students, right? And so we have Sophia, we have Andrew, we have Emma, and we have Logan. Now they need to have some set of scores that they're getting, right? So if we actually expand this for a minute, we can do it on top of each other. And I can see, what scores they recorded for Sophia and Andrew and Emma and Logan. So they had a 90, an 86, an 87, a 98, a 100, a 94, and a 90. And then Andrew had scores of 92, 89, 81, 96, 90, and 89. And you might be asking, well, why are you doing all this when you're programming? Well, if I can get my mind wrapped around how to calculate the values, then I can write the code to do it. But if I don't understand what I'm supposed to get to and how they got there, then me writing code all day long is just going to be me writing code, and it's become spaghetti code. It won't work very well. So getting a plan ahead of time and understanding the algorithm or the logic that is needed to solve it is pretty critical. So I think I missed something here. 90, 80. No, she's just short one. Okay. Okay, so ultimately what you see is we got all those scores, and their scores are in indexes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and that's probably good enough because there's only 10, I think, on the original. But that's a good question you might be asking. Well, if they set, the Sophia's scores this way, and the int Andrew scores this way, then they have different lengths. And that's absolutely true. So why is student score set to 10 when none of them actually have 10? Well, first of all, remember, again, basic tenets of being a programmer in C#, your zero-based index, so your first one is 0. So if size 10, your maximum or your upper bound is going to be 9, even though that number there is 10. So that's why 0 through 9 here. And because what we'll do is we'll just assign the student scores, we'll reassign it to point to Sophia scores or Andrew scores or Emma scores or Logan scores as needed. The length really here doesn't matter. That's just kind of an initial instantiation. But what we'll do is we'll say if the student name is Sophia, make student scores array equal to Sophia's scores. So for that run, it'll actually be this one. The next time through, then, if it's Andrew, the student scores there, be this one, right? So each time it hits, it gets a different size. So that one really just was a placeholder to make sure we had a variable that could be an array. And then the rest of them, every time we use it, just map to whatever line we're on here. So what's really interesting is you see here they have this exam assignments. So ultimately what happens is the first 5 indexes of the array, so 0 through 4, become exam scores. Anything else becomes extra credit. So that was one of the tricks, is to figure that out. So if I take 0 through 4, and let's actually do this. Let's quickly format this so we can kind of see this pretty easily. And then what we'll do is take 0 through 4, and we'll format that with a color. Let's say it's going to be this light blue color. Those are exam scores. And then anything else over here is essentially extra credit. Exactly. Cool. So now we have a better idea of where the break is on their scores, and what we can do is figure out, okay, what variables, what values do we need to show at the end of the day? Well, we need their overall exam score. So that's going to be the sum, or basically the average of these scores. So the original, yep, go ahead.
0 to 4 indexes.
Yes, right? Correct. So we'll do a sum of this one, 0. Well, actually, let's just do it the easy way. We'll just take it equals to this one plus this one plus this one plus this one plus that one, right? So that's their original exam sum. Let's change that so it makes a lot of sense to us. And then their original exam average is going to basically be equal to that divided by the count, which is 5, right? So we see their average is 92.2, and we see that lines up with what they're asking for there. So then we can kind of extrapolate that out and see, okay, 89.6, 85.6, and 89.6. Okay, so clearly this column is the original exam average. Except for I got something wrong here, because Logan says 91.2. Okay, this says 92.2. So why is Logan's not? Did I put the wrong scores in here? Did I do something wrong? Hold on. This is so. I had it wrong there too. Oops. I'm just going to copy what I had last night. I think I have it. Sorry. Should be these for Logan. Okay, so I had something wrong. Oh, Emma's scores are wrong, maybe. What's Emma's scores? 90, 85, 87, 98. No, those are right. Never mind. Ignore me. Okay, so 92.2, 92.2, 89.6, 85.6, and 91.2. So clearly that average now is this column. So now we know that this column and this column are the first 2 columns of that. So the hardest part is figuring out what this overall grade is, and that's dependent on this extra credit. So this number is how much extra credit they got, and this is what that equated to in the total points added to this number to make this number. If you look real closely, you can see that that's going to work out. So what did I do to get extra credit? Well, I sum up my extra credit. My extra credit sum is going to be equal to essentially whatever's in the remainder of these. So if I have more indexes, it's going to be that plus that. And if I do this one, it's going to be equal to that only, right? That's the only one that is there. And this is a little bit wonky, but you know, that plus that gets me that index. And then ultimately this is equal to that plus that. So I get, that should be empty. We don't really want that to show anything. So we get those values as the sum of their extra credit. Well, clearly that doesn't mean anything here. So how are they doing the calculation to figure out extra credit? Well, what if we get the extra credit average? Okay, so that's going to be equal to this divided by, in this case, it's 2. In this case, it's equal to this divided by 1. So it's just going to be the same thing. In this case, it's equal to this number 267 divided by 123. And in this case, it's going to be equal to this, again, divided by 1. So there's my extra credit. Does that check out?
Yes.
92, 89, 89, 96. Cool. Okay. So there's 92, 89, 89, 96. So there is my extra credit average. That's that column. So now we're starting to see, okay, cool. We got all this number. Now all we need to do is figure out how to calculate this number so that we can, or basically this number, so we can add it to this number, right? Or figure out what caused 92.2 with an average of 92 to go to 95.88. So ultimately, this is where the trick was. Did you have an answer on that, Venu? Did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, the difference of the extra credit figure and the exam score, overall score.
Yeah, so you're right, they take the exam overall score and they
if it's positive figure, it will be A, and if it is a negative figure, it will be A negative.
For the grade for A minus, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, basically what we're trying to do is figure out, well, what our score needs to be total based on, I had originally had an 85, which would have been somewhere in the B range, right? And then I get some 5 points here for extra credit. So if I add that to 5.34, I get 90.94, which then translates to the A minus. And then, yeah, so if we look at the code real quick of what was already there, they're calculating these grades based on, you know, if I got 93 or better, I get an A. If I got 90 to 93, I get an A minus, 87 to 90 to B plus, et cetera, all the way down through the failing grade. So based on that, I need to figure out, well, how do I get my score? And it's really tricky. So calculate the final numeric score as follows. Add 10% of the extra credit score sum to the exam score sum, and then divide that value by the number of exams. So essentially what they're saying here is they want me, oh, that doesn't translate very well. They want me to take 10% of this thing right here and add it to this, and then re-average it to get the new value. So that was an interesting thing. So essentially, extra credit points, EC points, is equal to this times 0.1, 10%, right? And so we know that's my total extra credit points for each one of those. And so then we have an adjusted exam sum, which is going to be equal to this value plus the original exam sum for each one of these. And if we score that across the board, you can see that their exam score went from 461 to 479, 448 to 456, 428 to 454, and 456 to 465. So then they say, okay, finally, now that I have this, let's get the adjusted grade, essentially, based on the extra credit being added in, which is the same 5 exam count, but now using this as the total. So this is just going to be equal to this divided by 5.
5.
Yeah. So then we get 95.88. We get 91.38. We get 90.94 and 93.12, right? So that means that I can calculate my extra credit points is equal to this
Difference between
minus,
the adjusted and the original exam score.
yep, exactly. Which if we look then 3.68, 1.78, 5.34, and 1.92. So now we have all the numbers we need to make our table. But look at all the hoops we had to jump through to get there, right? That's quite a bit. So what did we do? First, we summed. So I'm going to create the algorithm now that I need to write with code to make sure this thing's going to work. We summed the total exam points. Then we got the exam average as the exam score column, right? So that would be this average mapping to that column. So I think that's right. So then we were say, okay, then we summed the extra credit points, and basically we took that number. So that extra credit points did nothing for us except for the average of them. So we got the average of the extra credit EC points as the that column right there's the extra credit average as like the extra credit. We'll just call it extra credit as the extra credit. I'm going to call it prefix because basically if I combine this together, this is the prefix, this is the suffix. Together they make the whole entire extra credit column. 96, 1.92, where 96 is this average for the prefix, plus ultimately then that 1.92, we'll call that the suffix. But what I'm doing here is trying to hopefully help everyone see the algorithm now having been solved. I haven't written any code, but now I have an idea of what I need to do in the code. And that will get me to the point where I can write code a lot faster than just try to hammer code out. So once we did that, we then got the adjusted extra credit by taking 10% of the EC sum. We then used that, added the adjusted extra credit to the overall or original exam score, and then we got the average of the adjusted. And so the adjusted extra credit to the overall the original exam score as adjusted exam score. And then we take the average of the adjusted exam score as the adjusted grade. And then we got the sum or the difference between the adjusted grade and original exam average as EC points. So those are the steps I need to do with all of these numbers in order to get that table, and then I need to put the right ones into the table. So we know we want the exam score column to be the exam average, which if we look at our code, it's going to already be there. If we run this, we would see we currently have a sum of assignment and a current student grade, but we see that right here, we have the sum of the assignment scores, and we have a current student grade, which is the sum of the assignment scores divided by the exam assignments. So basically, that's the original grade. And if we ran this to completion, I think that's where it would show it. would say, yeah, 95.8, 91.2, 90.4. So I think something's not right. Oh, you know why? Because it's adding these in. Okay. So that's also why it's confusing, because there's a bunch of things mixed together here, and it's not exactly getting the right numbers along the way. So starting with what they had originally given, we need to basically do this algorithm. So sum the total exam points. So sum of the assignment points. So we have a decimal of current student grade. So I'm going to change this to original exam. What do we call that thing? We call that original exam average. Something like that, right? So we have the original exam sum. Let's just do this. Original. The more descriptive I can be here, the more the better I can do with this. Again, there's about 1,000 ways to do this. I'm probably making this harder than it needs to be, but whatever. Then we have the number of graded assignments, and we have the three things that we created, which were the exam score, the extra credit score, and the total extra credit. Let's change those. So this is going to be the adjusted exam sum. So this is the original exam average and the original exam sum, which is that column. We have this graded assignments, which is a little confusing. So let's move it out of here for a second. We have we need this extra credit sum. So extra credit score, let's change that to extra credit sum. We have the extra credit average. Like I said, I blew all these away after I created the thing because I just needed to make more sense to myself. Then we have an int extra credit points. And so again, I'm creating some intermediate variables here. Probably not the best way to write code, but it's going to work. And then I have an int, or basically a decimal. So that's actually going to be a decimal too, right? Decimal. And the adjusted exam sum. So that actually I had here. So let's decimal. And then to make this even more clear, let's put them in order. So we have original exam average, extra credit sum, extra credit average, adjusted exam sum. And then we have a decimal adjustment grade and a decimal for extra credit points. So now we have, these are going to be decimals, so they need to have an M next to them. And of course, now we're going to have some broken code down here because some of these variables don't exist. So for now, let's just comment that out. So I did Control KC to do that. Let's try to run it, see if I've got anything broken, which I likely do. Build failed, fix the errors and run again. Awesome. Current student grade does not exist. Okay, so I replaced a variable with current student grade, and that's going to ultimately be, the grade is going to be based off the adjusted grade. So let's fix that. So let's take the adjusted exam sum. I got two of the same variables. The adjusted exam average, which is adjusted grade. How about that? Adjusted grade, so it lines up with my columns. Just credit points. This is why you should have lined it up right away, Brian. Okay, extra credit sum, extra credit average. There's nothing in that column. Extra credit points, adjusted sum, adjusted grade. And then ultimately extra credit points. Wait, why do I have extra credit points twice? Sorry, this EC points. This one is extra credit sum, extra credit average, adjusted sum, adjusted grade. Okay, so ultimately we have that, and then I need to take this adjusted grade. So our current student grade is going to be the adjusted grade now. So all of that, and I screwed that up there. So that current student grade variable is gone. Again, not necessarily the ideal way to do this, but okay, build failed again. The name sum assignment scores does not exist. Okay, so I broke this on purpose because this is the sum assignment scores here. So that's actually going to be the sum of the original exam sum. And we also have a new one for the extra credit sum. And they did the calculation right here to get the extra credit and its points. So that's one way you could do it. What I would like to do here is actually not do that till later. So I'm going to go ahead and just sum them first. So following my algorithm, as we come in, we're going to get the sum of all of the exams, 0 through 4 in the array. And then the remainder, whatever's left, will go here for every score in the student scores. We'll start going to that extra credit sum. So we'll have this average and these points, or these points and these points already calculated when we get done with that if statement. Is that pretty clear what I'm doing there? Okay.
Yes. Pretty clear.
All right. Let's take a 2-minute break and we'll come back at 5 after and finish up.
Sure.
Yep, be right back. All right.
Okay.
So we're gonna finish this up. Are you what do you think so far of the strategy, Vinu? What do you think? Does this seem
Yeah, it's a nice strategy. We are creating the formulas and all in the Excel, so we have a clear algorithm and move from there. Go from there.
yeah. Cool. So we got the sum. Basically, we got the original exam sum and the extra credit sum. We got that figured out. So if I just put a little mark there, we got the sum of the total and the sum of the extra credit. So what we don't have yet is the exam average, and we want that to be our exam score column. So ultimately, if we looked at our original thing, we said the exam score value was going to be that column, that second column. So what I want to do is I want to come back here now, and I want to say get the exam score. And that's basically going to be the exam score is going to be, and I think I might have, it's going to be the original exam sum divided by the number of assignments, which is the same thing we had here, right? So it was the sum of assignment scores. So we'll wipe that out for now. So exam score is the original exam sum divided by the number of assignments, which is what we did to get this. We took the original exam sum and divided it by 5. So that should work out pretty good. And then we need to get the average of the extra credit points as the extra credit prefix. So basically we need some variable that's going to store the extra credit prefix, which is, if we look at the output, that 92 or 89 or 89 or 96 there. So for that, we need to store something. And we have the extra credit sum and the extra credit average. I'm not sure we had the extra credit prefix, but if we look here, I had created this thing called total extra credit and extra credit score. So that extra credit score is what we can use to save that first part, or the prefix part of the thing. So I don't have extra credit score there. I might have deleted it, so we may have to add it back here in a second. But basically that extra credit score, and again, you know, they say don't comment everything, which makes sense. So the extra credit score is essentially going to be the average of the extra credit sum divided by, so I'm going to use Copilot here for a second. We're going to get rid of this, this 10 here. So based on this and looking at this layout here, we can see that our number is going to be variable, right? But how do we get the number that we want to divide by to get the average of the extra credit score based on what we see here? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's from index 6 to the rest of the columns. If it has values, we can count. Otherwise,
right. So let's think closely about this. If I have 90, 94, 0, 0, and 0, and I say, what's the average of these? I would say it's 90 plus 94 divided by 5, right? Well, that's a pretty low number considering that, compared to this one is 90 plus 94 divided by 2 instead of by 5.
2.
So
Yeah.
2, 1, 3, and 1. And I mean, if they came back and added another score here, it would be 2. So it's kind of a variable. It's a variant number, but it's always going to be based on,
If there's a value, you
yeah.
can count.
So we know the first 5 are always going to be exam scores, right? And then anything additional is extra credit. So if we put some sort of accumulator in, or if we just do some sort of length operation, we could typically figure it out. If the length is not variant though, we could run into a problem where, you know, if we always had a length of 10 and these were just not assigned, we would still get that 5, 5, 5, 5 for our answer. So fortunately, the way these are created, we can use the length, but you could also, if you wanted to be really careful and clear, you could add another accumulator. You could say int num EC assignments equals 0, and then you could just basically here add a number of VC assignments. The alternative is if you don't do that, of course, you would need squiggly braces if you do that, which is another reason why it's always nice to have them, because I just modified the code and I had to add them anyway. Right? It helps me as a programmer see exactly where the attended block was, but I can do that. So if I do that and then I have this number, that's my average. Whatever this sum is divided by that number is going to be my average. If I don't need that, which we don't in this case, because the length of the array is predetermined by how many values are in there. So this one's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, which is actually a length of 7, a length of 6, a length of 8, a length of 7 or 6, again, 6. And so we can take that length minus the 5 that we know are exams, and we can get 2, 1, 3, and 1 again, right? So those are our values we want. So what we could do is the length is always just going to be, so if we're going to get the extra credit average, it's just going to be the length of the student array. So extra credit average is equal to the, extra credit score here. And then basically we just have the length of the array. So student names dot, or student scores, dot length minus exam assignments. So if this is 8 and that's 5, we get 3. If this is 6 and that's 5, we get 1. So the decimal of that whole thing is whatever the sum is divided by that count. And that's our extra credit score. So I'm at a point where I'm like, I think I pretty much got the first 4, but I'm not 100% sure that I did this right. What if I made a mistake? Well, I'd like to see that. So what I'd like to do is print that out and just see it. So maybe I'm going to just quickly print out those first 4 values, console.writeLine, and we'll just do, average. Well, why don't we follow along with our variables? We have original exam sum, and we'll just print it out, original exam sum. And again, you can kind of do this however you want to. This is, there's going to be, we'll learn about debugging, I think, in the next week or so anyway, where you could just step in and see what the variables are. We have 4 variables. We want to see what they all are. We want to make sure they look right. At this point, we should be able to compare them to what's going on with the table, and we should be able to see, hey, things are looking pretty good. Now I'm going to say these are actually, let's do this. Let's just write line, and we'll do /t, or just write instead of write line, so I can see them all in one line. So I got all 4 students' things and not have 16 lines. So let's see how we're doing. Oops, we don't want to do that. Let's do it this way. Oops, I still have an error. Unterminated string literal. Which one's missing? That one. Cool, you guys get to see me make some mistakes, and then you get to see what that looks like. Console does not contain a definition for write. You mean console does not contain a definition for write? Challenge program, line 102, column 13. Oh, look at that, I made a small W. Line 102, line 40, the name extra credit score. So hopefully that'll get fixed. Yep. The name exam score does not exist. So this is one thing that I don't necessarily like. So exam score, and it's actually an int, I think. It's just going to be, I don't know, let's, you know what, decimal exam score. And the other one was extra credit score does not exist. That's definitely a decimal. Exam score is definitely a decimal. All right, let's run this thing again. See if I broke it. Still got it broken. Okay, so, and then I forgot to make a new line here. Okay, so original exam is 461, original exam average is 0, exam score is 92, extra credit score is 92. So what did I forget to use this variable? Is that what happened? So I think I put exam score in its place. So let's do this. We're going to take out exam score. We're going to follow along with our answer, original exam average, and then we'll put that here. All right, one more time. What have I just done? All right, I'm backing out. All right, the original exam average should be here. That's this thing that we called this. That's going to be what we wanted to show down here. Right, let's try this again now. Okay. There we go, 92.2, 89.6, 85.6, and 91.2. Then the extra credit sum and the extra credit, so points and average, what we wanted to do there. I'm starting to get very tired. So extra credit sum is here. This should be called extra credit average. I don't know why I added additional for that. Extra credit average. And then in our output, and this should have been extra credit sum. Which is this. Okay, so we don't need that exam score anymore either. Can I implicitly type decimal to int? So I'm trying to do extra credit average should be a decimal. Okay, so that's looking better. And does that map to what we had? So this is 184, 89, 257, and 96, and then 92, 89, 99. Yeah, so, okay, so finally I got my code up to speed. So we have those first 4 parts of the algorithm done, and they're stored in variables, which we're printing out. So now I need to get the adjusted extra credit by taking 10% of that score. So we already have the extra credit average here, which is that number, which is this 96. But we need to take the extra credit sum and multiply that by 10% to get the extra credit points. So this was the sum multiplied by 10% to get the extra credit points. So here, let's do decimal, extra credit, additional points equals 0M. And that value is essentially get the additional points to add to the original exam score. That value is equal to extra credit average divided by 10. It's already a decimal, but I think that'll give us the additional extra credit points. So extra credit, let's do this, extra credit additional points. All right, and then I'm gonna print it out and see where we're at. So 9.6, 8.9, 8.9, and 9.2. It's not right. It should have been the sum. See, this is, again, why it's important to not just go hacking, because I'm making all kinds of mistakes. Not the extra credit addition points is the extra credit sum divided by 10. If I didn't have that spreadsheet, I wouldn't have even known I made a mistake. 18.4, 8.9, 26.7, 9.6. So now they're all there. So now I can add that to the original score to get the adjusted exam sum. And I know that, like it said, don't comment every line here, but I'm just doing it for today for demonstration purposes. So original exam sum plus extra credit additional points. So that would give us the value we're looking for. So now we can take that number and print that out as well. Let's do this. And let's change this to a T. Change this to a T. Print that out. Extra credit additional points, adjusted exam sum, 479, 456, 454, and 465, which lines up pretty good. Those. So now we can get the adjusted grade. So that's got the adjusted points, added the adjusted to the org exam score as adjusted exam score, average of the adjusted exam score as the adjusted grade. So get the adjusted grade, which is going to be ADJ grade, is equal to the adjusted exam sum divided by the number of assignments. Adjusted grade. We'll run that. And we see 93.1, 90, 91, and 95. Looks like those line up pretty good as well. So the last thing we need to do is just get that difference between the adjusted grade and the org exam as EC points. So EC points, total extra credit points. EC points is equal to the original exam sum subtracted from the adjusted exam sum. So adjusted grade minus original exam average. Yep. And then once we have that, now we can print that out as well. And we can see that that will line up, hopefully. 1.9, 5.3, 1.7, and 3.68. So those look like they're pretty good. So now we have all the values that we need in order to print out our final statement. So obviously I'm not going to want to print this out every time, but I may come back to this code someday and want to adjust it or fix it or debug it. And I don't know anything better right now. And I've learned about these really cool statements like should use an if statement. So should show debug info or something like that, right? And I'm going to wrap all of those console.writes inside of there. And then what I'll do is I will create this as a variable at the top of the program. Bool should show debug info, and we'll set it to false. And we'll run it. We should get no output. Yep. And then if we turn it on, we can run it and we can get our output. So we can see, we can easily toggle for now if we want to show that output. So that leaves the last piece of the puzzle, which is just making that nice friendly final printout so that we see our grades. So again, they took that adjusted grade value now, set that current student letter grade. So we're saying from the current student, the original exam average, and this will be the adjusted student grade, right? And now the current student letter grade and the exam and total extra credit. Let's see how close we got. I'm thinking I might be off a little bit. Yeah. Extra credit score does not exist. Okay, so this we changed to the extra credit score, which was the extra credit sum, right? This thing right here. Total extra credit also doesn't exist. That was the EC points. All right, let's try it now. Cool. So we got Sophia, 92.2, 95.88, and an A, and 184 is not the right number there. Oops. So this was the wrong value. This should have been the sum, not the sum, the average, right? Extra credit average. All right, one last time. Sophia got 92.2, 95.88 with an A and 92 and 3.68 points. Andrew, 89.6, 91.38, A minus and 89 points. Emma, 85.6, 90.94, A minus and 89 points, and 5.34. And everything else looks like it lines up for Logan as well. So it took a little longer than I expected. I made a few mistakes in there, which I always love making mistakes when it's a live demo, because then you guys get to see that and see how I fight through them, and hopefully that will help. But again, hopefully this is useful.
Nice presentation, and we made mistakes. We can learn from the mistakes. That will be more. It's like a nice on the click.
Mm-hmm. You're right, and that's what, like, when you make a mistake, you'll never forget it, right? It's like, this is my best chance to learn. So if it was too easy, you wouldn't remember it. But hopefully, watching me futz through some of that and seeing me get to the point of getting to the result by making an algorithm first and doing that gives you some strategies that you can do as well. Again, we don't have nearly enough time to go through all the modules, so you will be on your own to do that. And this week we did have both those first two. Next week we have the second two, which is going to be the add logic to C# consoles, and then work with variable data. And then finally, I think in the last week is when we get to do debug. Now, you don't have to wait for me to do these. If you want to do them all next weekend, get them all done and take the test and get your exam, get your certification, great. If you want to go at the same pace I'm going, we got two more. They are pretty intense. It takes a few hours to get through each one of them. I would love to get questions, though, rather than me just doing live demos. It would be awesome if we had questions about, like, how does this code work, or why did that happen? Or, if you have a code sample and you need some help with it, don't hesitate to post it inside of here. You can either post it as a file, or you can post a picture of it, or you can post the text, and we can try to fight through what the heck's going on with the program. But
sure, will do.
Yeah. So I don't have anything else I wanted to do today. Unless there's other questions, we can call it a day a little early, give you some time back. But hopefully, again, it was useful and you guys enjoyed it. So
thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, Vinu. You have a great day. Thanks for sticking with me the whole time.
Yep. See you.
See you later.